Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, Bean here, and today I'm coming at you with a brand new video. Finally, I'm back in front of my shelves, and I'm coming at you today with a video that I haven't fully figured out the title of yet, but it's basically impulse buys or cover buys that I have acquired over the years that have led to good things, that have led to me enjoying this author, even though I hadn't heard of them before, or me reading a bunch of books by them, or making different decisions, or whatnot. So we're just going to hop right into it, and I'm going to start with a couple of nonfiction books, actually, that I picked up on a whim. So when I say on a whim, this kind of goes back years, so this isn't just in the past year. Because the first book I'm going to do is Adulting, How to Become a Grown-Up in 468 Easy-ish Steps by Kelly Williams Brown. I read this book right after I moved into my very first apartment. So there was a half-price books not too far, and my roommate at the time, hi Morgan, her and I really loved to read, and we had reading nights at the apartment. It was so much fun. It was great. I miss those days. But we would actually go to the half price and we would exchange our books quite frequently. We would go at least once a month or once every other week, if I remember correctly. We might even have gone every week for what I remember. This was years ago and I'm aging myself. Anyways, this is a book that I picked up and I read on our little balcony that we had. And it had so many good points in it that I literally picked it up because I liked the word adulting. And this was, at the time, one of the first times I had heard that word. But granted, this was back in like 2014, 2015, something like that. This is a couple years ago here, friends. So yeah, I definitely picked this one up and I got a lot more out of it than I thought I was going to. And I still use a lot of the tips that I learned in this book to this day. All right, the next nonfiction book I say was a impulse buy, and the reason I say that actually is because it's a book of the month book, and I'm actually, if you think about it, book of the month is just full of impulse buys. They don't give you the full summary of the books. You can look them up if you want to, but they just give you a little sneak at it, a little short like one sentence blurb. And the book that I picked, one of the first times I ever got book of the month, was The Library book by Susan Orlean. This depicts the history of, I think it's the Los Angeles Public Library. Yes, the Los Angeles Public Library. And I thought it was so interesting to learn about the library and learn about what goes on there. And it actually was one of the first things that got me interested in being a librarian, which is currently my my career goal, is to become a librarian. So I think that this book definitely kind of inadvertently set me on the path that I'm headed down now towards becoming a librarian, and I think that's really cool that a book started that. The next book that I'm going to talk about is a small book that I don't know that I've talked about on this channel much, but it's The Crocodile and the Sandbank by Elizabeth Peters. Now this is an Amelia Peabody mystery, so it's a mystery series. I honestly actually only read the first one, which is really disappointing, but the reason I've only read the first one was because I would continually go to my library and they never had the second one. I didn't realize at the time that they didn't have every single book. So that was just me not really thinking things through. I have since found the second one and I will hopefully be reading it maybe next year. But this is an older book. For me, this is one of my oldest books that I have on my shelf, that I bought myself. I picked it up on a random because of the cover. It was definitely a cover impulse buy for me. It said that it was a Victorian age mystery, and I went, deal. And then it said it was sold in Egypt, and I grabbed it off the shelf. So that's kind of how this one ended up working for me. But it really kind of sparked my interest in mystery stories because I liked mysteries beforehand, but this really got me into the adult mysteries rather than the A to Z, the kids mysteries kind of stuff. Yeah, Hardy Boys and those kind of things, which I definitely read as a child, but this kind of got me into adult mysteries, so that's kind of cool. Going off of that, I then started looking at cozy mysteries, and I started picking up books based on their titles, which was an interesting one. First one being If the Walls Could Talk. This is a construction mystery series, or like a haunted home renovation mystery series that I started years ago and I absolutely loved. I thought this was a great book. And it really got me more into actual cozy mysteries, and I started picking up a whole bunch more. And now I have a small collection of cozy mysteries on my other shelf. So that is now a thing. Along with that one, I also ended up finally getting Well Read Then Dead, just mostly because of the cover, or because of the title. And then I read this one and I absolutely loved it. I bought the next 2 books in the series, and I'm planning on finishing the series by the end of the year because there's only 3 books, so there's no real reason why I can't finish it. But basically it's a mystery that takes place in a cafe/bookstore, which is like my aesthetic. So yes, definitely glad that it kind of has led me to getting to this point. The next book that I picked up on a whim, I'm not sure if you'll believe me that I picked it up on a whim, because it wasn't this version that I picked up on a whim. It was the mass market paperback edition I did. And that is Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. I definitely picked it up because I thought the cover sounded interesting. I thought the cover looked cool, and I literally just grabbed it because it was like $2 or $3 or something at half price books, so I picked up that copy. I have since upgraded to getting this version, and now I have a pretty version, and I really like the second one to come out in the pretty version, but I don't think it's going to, and that makes me very sad. But I have the second one, and this is definitely a book that has gotten me into some high fantasy-ish type of stuff. It's definitely gotten me out of my comfort zone of YA, and it's one of the first books that I read that was adult fantasy, adventure, and fiction that I really got drawn into, and I kind of have switched over to adult fantasy for the most part since then. So this was definitely a book. May not have been the exact first one, but it's definitely one that made an impact on me switching more to adult fantasy, and I still will call it to this day an impulse buy. The next one was an impulse buy from when I worked at Barnes & Noble. This book, I believe it came out then. So this book actually came out while I was working at Barnes & Noble, and one cool thing that we had as a treat for working at Barnes & Noble was you were allowed to borrow hardcover books for a limited time as long as you left the covers at the store, and you had like a week to read the book, and it kind of encouraged the workers to read books that they were trying to sell, and so it made sense, and I definitely did that quite a bit. One of the books that I did that with was Foundry by Robert Jackson Bennett. Now, this isn't the first Robert Jackson Bennett book I have read. The first one was City of Stairs, but I read that one, and I don't think I read it very well, because I think I ended up skimming parts of it, and so I got very confused. But I read this book, and I couldn't put it down, and it actually kind of got me started in Barnes & Noble with, like, pushing people a little bit out of their comfort zone, because this book was totally out of my comfort zone. I really didn't know a lot about it. I knew it was a fantasy, and I knew it was blurbed at the top by Tamora Pierce. That's literally all I knew about this book when I picked it up. And if you go into the description, the first line, Santiagrado is a thief, and a damned good one. All right, that's all I knew. And then I grabbed it and I read it and I loved it. And I have the sequel and I need to read it because it took so long for the sequel to come out. But yeah, so it kind of got me to try and push other people out of their comfort zones as well. But it's definitely a book that I impulse bought and ended up loving. I hope you can't hear my stomach growling. So when I first got out of college, one of my first jobs was I worked as a coaching assistant for a field hockey team. And the coach himself was a big reader as well. So one of the things he did was he introduced me to something called BookBub, which is a daily email, or weekly, depending on what you want, that sends you that week's or that day's Amazon deals for ebooks. So 99-cent deals, 99-cent books, free books, $1 books, that kind of stuff, or $1.99. I think the most expensive book, at least at the time that I started, that I still used it, that they had was, I think the most expensive was $2.99 was what they'd have on that list. And it was a list that you would curate yourself. You'd send them your preferences and go off like that. And it worked out really well. So I actually got a whole bunch of books from there. And one of the books I found out I started it, but I never finished it at the time because at the time I just got distracted by everything. So I never finished anything. And it was Thorn by Intisar Kanani. And it was the first time she had released this novel. So she actually ended up releasing this novel twice. Once as just an ebook and the second time as a physical novel, which I think is kind of cool. But it was so interesting because I looked back on the books that I had bought and I had already bought this one. So I already had technically cover bought it. I'm pushing it a little bit, I know, but we're going with it. And this has actually turned into one of my favorite retellings I've ever read. So I'm going to say that this was a cover buy and I absolutely loved it. And yeah, definitely got me more into retellings after this. The next book I'm going to bring up is actually one that we all saw the author live in 2020. Yeah, last year. March of last year, I think it was. And that's Neal Shusterman. And now I am a big fan of Neal Shusterman. The first book of his, though, that I read was definitely a cover buy, and I never connected the name with this book until his tour, and then went, oh, duh, I'm an idiot. But it's Challenger Deep by Neal Shusterman. This is a wonderfully written book, but definitely was a cover buy because I was very interested. I don't know why. I just wanted a blue book, and I thought it looked cool, so I grabbed it off the shelf. And it has been a success because it was a great book. It really was, and I highly recommend it. If you haven't read it, this book was published in 2015, I believe, so it's a little bit of an older book, but it's so well done. It is so well done. The next one is actually an impulse buy from Book Outlet, from one of the first boxes I got from them, and it's a book that has actually gotten me to read more by this author, and again, more kind of twists and turns types of books, and that is Meddling Kids by Edgar Cantero. This is a reimagining of Scooby-Doo, but creepy. I think this is one of the books that actually started getting me interested in reading horror and thriller books, because this is definitely a horror thriller book. But, dude, it's so creepy. And it's so well done at the same time. But Edgar Cantero writes interesting books. Like, they are very twisted at points and very deep. And it's so weird and creepy. And it gets you kind of all creeped out. I don't know. Words are hard right now. But definitely would add this book to the list for sure. And I really liked it. I actually ended up reading another book by him that I ended up really liking, and that was This Body Is Not Big Enough for Two People. Which was about two people occupying the same body, literally. The last book that I want to talk about today is Into the Drowning Deep by Mira Grant. I picked this one up because of the cover, and then because all I knew was the ocean is home to many myths, some are deadly, and basically assumed killer mermaids and went, all right, that looks creepy. I want a creepy book. And since then, this has been one of my favorite books of all time. This is a creepy killer mermaid book, and guys, it's a creepy one. Definitely recommend this one. So yeah, that's my list of most of the impulse buys that I have made that have ended up going in my favor, that I've ended up enjoying, and not because they were necessarily recommended to me or advertised to me in a certain way, if that makes any sense. So yeah, well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, now is the perfect time to give it a thumbs up and to hit that subscribe button. We post videos every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday, and if you want to be reminded when we post these videos, hit the little bell icon down below. Until next time, guys, stay safe, stay healthy, and keep reading. Bye!